Hello, and welcome to the Off-Meta Umineko Read-Along podcast, the weekly podcast where I guide my friends and first-time readers through my favorite story of all time, the highly acclaimed murder mystery visual novel, Umineko When They Cry. We'll be discussing its narrative and themes, and they will be working together with our community to try and solve its various mysteries. We hope you will join us on this exciting journey as we delve into the witch's cat box. I'm Kyle J, and joining me on our one-way trip to Rokkenjiima, we have our readers, James Capelli and Hayley. Welcome, y'all. So, how was your read this week?
I'm sad. I'm sad for Battler with what happens here, but it's good for the story. So a dense episode, and so much happens, and I'm like, I feel at this point like I'm pretty sure I know exactly how the narrative is gonna go.
Okay.
Bare bones of what I think the story's gonna be and how it's gonna evolve. Not to say I predicted twists. I think I know how it's going to play out.
Interesting. Well, we'll see how close you end up being.
Man, I'm really intrigued. You think you know how it's going to play out? That's fascinating.
Well, Hayley, if you listened to last week's episode, Ben and I talked about it a little bit, but I'll definitely get into it a little bit more.
Okay. I did listen to part of last week's, actually. So my read this week has been sporadic. let's say that. In between work, and I have today. I'm working so much right now. So today I was trying to read while also working, and also while being really, really tired because I was up last night reading really late as well. So I was falling asleep while reading. So that's how my read is going. It is very dense.
Wow,
it's a real struggle.
That's some determination.
Glowing endorsement right there. Falling asleep.
Right?
Yeah. Sorry, fans.
But you liked it, right? Well, I guess obviously you wouldn't be doing it if you didn't.
Oh yeah, I'm fascinated. I'm really intrigued with where the story's going to go. I'm absolutely committed, but man, there are some bits of it, and we'll talk about those bits.
Mm-hmm.
But there are some bits of it that are a real struggle for me.
I have a couple bits that I would wish I could speed up some things that are very different from what I think you want to speed up. But we'll get there.
Yeah, Umineko is notorious for probably having needed an edit. So, not too surprising.
I'm not big on Stephen King. I know that's out of nowhere. I'm not big on Stephen King, but I have read a couple of his books. Notably, I read the unabridged version of The Stand. Because my brother loves Stephen King, so he's like, you gotta read this book. It's got a controversial ending whether people like it or not, and I used to hate it, and I think it's brilliant, etc., etc. So, okay, I'll listen to it, or read it, whatever. And I read it. I took it on, a long vacation with me back in the day, and I read that massive tome. And eventually, I met my wife, and I got her to read it. And she is an English major. She's brilliant writer, very good critic of writing pieces, how can improve, things can improve, whatnot. And her one takeaway from The Stand was, she's like, this needed to not be unabridged. This book needed an editor. Where was Stephen King's editor for this goddamn book?
Yeah, it sounds like the unabridgment might have not been a choice. It may have been a necessity. The editor just quit.
Well, also, I looked it up. You cannot find the unabridged version, or the abridged version of it. It doesn't exist anymore. You can only buy the unabridged.
Wow.
Unless you find it used somewhere in the world.
Oh my god.
Interesting.
That's sad.
Yeah. So I think we'll get to a point with this where we'll say, did this really need to take 120, 150 hours, however long it takes to read it all?
Mm-hmm. I already feel like that.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely, especially because it's repetitive by nature to a degree, so.
I think that's just also a very Japanese thing, right? That's how they enunciate themes.
Yeah, it definitely seems to be the way that this writer likes to, really likes to go back to that well of repeating certain themes over and over again. All right, well, this week we are continuing episode 2, Turn of the Golden Witch, with about 3 hours of the VN, ending with the line, "Can you see it, Ushiromiya Battleeeeeeeeeer?" After which the clock advances from 1:35 to 6. And that is videos 28 through 30 of the YouTube playlist. So if you have not caught up to that point yet, go ahead and stop the podcast and catch up before rejoining us. Or if you're just listening to us along for the ride, welcome aboard. Our story resumes after everyone leaves the chapel and returns to the parlor. Battler and George collapse on the couches, and Maria watches TV like nothing has happened. Kumasawa finally arrives and is informed of the deaths in the chapel. Rosa reminds herself to stay strong, as she now has to be a parent for not only Maria, but also Jessica, George, and Battler. Not that George needs a parent, I would say, but, whatever.
Agree.
Rosa, being the youngest sibling, has always had a complex about feeling incompetent. But now, as the only survivor of the siblings, and the acting head of the Ushiromiya family, she could no longer take such a passive attitude. Heading to Kindo's study to take charge of properly informing him of the situation, a single golden butterfly lands on Rosa's back, unnoticed. With a flash of lightning, Beatrice appears and wonders how she should entertain herself next.
So I wanted to talk about Rosa at this point. She now has had more dialogue and more spotlight in this chapter than any part of the previous game combined. Is she a good or interesting character? And I have my thoughts, but I'll leave that to Hayley to give her thoughts first.
Oh, you're asking me the question? Okay.
Yeah.
What do you mean by good? Morally or just literarily?
Is it a good character, right? Like, does this character add to the story? Does this character engage you? Do you want more of them? Are you excited when they're on screen?
No. No. She's... In fact, I think in my notes for the opening for this one, I put... I literally wrote these today and I've already forgotten what I wrote. I put... So the very first line I wrote was, starting to think that Kumasawa done it. I think just because she keeps disappearing and coming out of nowhere. But then my next line is, Rosa is a piece of shit.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's basically my whole opinion on Rosa. I do not like her at all. I don't know if she particularly adds anything to the story. I think it's what point are we after the chapel? I think it's interesting that the adult women that are left behind after the first massacre are mothers. So because the first time it was Natsui, this time it's Rosa. I think there's maybe something to that. I don't know.
Well, the only adult women that aren't mothers is Kumasawa and Beatrice.
And Kirie. She doesn't have a kid, does she?
She's not a biological mother, but...
She has a daughter, Angie.
Oh, does she?
That's true. I thought... Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, she's mentioned, early on in the first, couple hours of the game entirely.
Yeah, I remember Angie, but I hadn't really registered that was Kirie's daughter. I'd assumed it was Battler's full sister, not half sister.
Yeah.
Right?
I think if she were the one left and not Rosa, I think she would take on the same role of I am assuming responsibility of these kids as their maternal figure for them for at least now. Yeah. So I think in that sense she's still a mother. So to that end, Kumasawa's the only one that's not a mom, and she has been alive both times afterward.
That's true. It's just, man, she's such a shitty mom. For her to be thinking, now I have to be your parent, it's what a joke.
Yeah.
What a joke.
I'll defend Rosa a little bit here, and then we'll get back to criticism, because there's a lot to get to that.
There's lots of criticism we can do.
Yes. She's in an interesting position in this episode where, yeah, she is the only sibling that remains. She has a fantastic line a bit later on. I forgot to copy it down, but it's along the lines of the youngest sister's intelligence is the oldest sister's -1.
Yeah.
And now that there are no other siblings here, I can kind of do whatever I need to do. So it's interesting to look at it from that view, is that she's been so thoroughly repressed her whole life that the moment all of her siblings are gone, she just has a complete personality change, it seems like. Very strange. Yeah, she's very aggressive, but also in some ways she's practical. There's sometimes when they're just yeah, Rosa, we probably should all stick together.
Yeah.
Having a gun is great. You're correct. And then there's times just she's a sociopath, and it's let's just throw all the wolves out and see which one of them, which one of these are actually sheep, because if they die, then we'll know.
Yeah. Is it really a personality change, though? Because I feel like all of that was evident to us in her treatment of Maria in episode 1 as well. She is cruel. She is ruthless. She is practical to a fault, which is why she's always criticizing Maria, because she wants her to have, you know, the practical skills to get through life.
I gave this theory last episode where I think that Rosa may have interacted with Beatrice when she was young. And I think it was going to lead into some trauma about Rosa being revealed, which is going to explain more of why she is the way that she is. And I don't think it'll justify her, in my opinion, but context is always important when you're looking at these characters, why they act the way they do, why they're so harsh, why they abuse, instead of trying to understand, you know, what has worn them down. And I'm pretty sure we're going to get a lot of that, not this chapter, but in the future. Well, maybe this chapter. This we got a lot of stuff about Natsui last time, so I think we're going to get a lot of stuff about Rosa here.
Assuming she survives.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll see.
I think she'll survive to the very, very, very end, like Natsui survived to the very, very, very end. I think it's going to be the same thing. I don't think she's going to get to the Golden Land. I think maybe 3 people are going to survive. Definitely not all 5. Is what I think is going to happen here.
Well, your predictions are infamous, I guess, so we shall see.
Are they?
If that ends up being true. Well, they're infamous to me, because I love hearing them. And they're all terrible, so...
One last thing I'll bring up before we move on to the next section is the way Beatrice lands on Rosa's back or shoulder as she's heading up to see Kinzo leads me to believe that she is going to get past the seal and kill or interact with Kinzo in some way. And the fact that we don't get any of that before the storyline moves on gives me leads into what I think the narrative is going to be with this story moving forward. So I'll get to that at the end, why I think that and what that means.
Yeah, I'm really intrigued with what's going on with Kinzo in that room and like what he said to Shannon, and it's all amazing.
Yeah, some juicy details were implied with the will there, so hopefully we'll get to find out a little bit more about him, because he's quite mysterious. In the parlor, as the only person who didn't see the horrifying scene in the chapel, Kumasawa finds herself unable to match the energy of the others. In an attempt to prompt everyone to have some breakfast, she accidentally brings up Halloween, causing the mood to sour further. After she apologizes to Battler and George, they discuss how the culprit is likely still on the island. While the mysterious guest Beatrice is the most likely suspect, Dr. Nanjo posits that she too might have been caught up in the crime. Battler and George find it strange that the culprit would go to such lengths to display their crime when they would know they would be unable to escape because of the typhoon. Finally remembering that Jessica exists, George worries about leaving her and Kanon alone. Rereading the letter they found in the chapel, they realize that the culprit will likely be trying to kill everyone on the island, unless they can solve the witch's epitaph. Goda and Nanjo say that none of the adult siblings ever really seemed to believe in Kinzo's hidden gold, but the 3 ingots left in the chapel are quite convincing. Kumasawa recalls overhearing that Krauss had found a single ingot the bank president had supposedly taken to verify its legitimacy, but that he believed it to be the only real ingot. Goda says that none of the adult siblings could have brought them onto the island with them, as he carried their bags to their rooms and didn't notice any suspicious weights. This seems to confirm the existence of Kinzo's 10 tons of hidden gold. But if the culprit could present 3 ingots, enough to confirm the existence of the gold, and likely that they are already in possession of it, why do they want everyone to try and solve the epitaph? Maria suddenly laughs and tells everyone that the witch Beatrice cares not for gold, only that everyone attempts to solve her riddle.
Man, so I think Capelli's got some stuff to say here, but with just you reminding me of Maria's laugh there, I am really, especially with the reading for the last episode, I'm really getting more reinforced in my belief that Beatrice and Maria are one and the same.
Ooh.
They basically laugh the same. One is just more mature than the other. I absolutely love the voice actor for Beatrice's, like, her laugh is, it's so dirty and fun. It's amazing. And I think Maria's is like that.
I had a line in our group chat, which is like, I hope to have as much fun doing anything in life as the woman who voices Beatrice seems to have fun with this role.
Yeah.
It's just, she just gets to go so unhinged. I love it.
It's great.
But yeah, I hadn't made that connection. Or maybe that's just something witches do. Another possible, not to diminish your theory, which I do like, is kids just emulate people they admire.
Yeah, that's true.
True.
Yeah, they do.
You know?
They do. I also noticed Maria seems to speak in the third person. listening to the voice acting, she says Maria this, but the actual translation says I.
Interesting.
So yeah, and like I tried to see if it was just like a Japanese thing, but whenever I hear the others talking about themselves, I don't hear them saying their own name. But I noticed that I was hearing Maria say her own name a lot.
Yeah, I don't know a ton about Japanese language. I know there's some, like they have a variety of pronouns that are kind of self-assigned that they have a variety of meanings. So I don't know if Maria using her own name as opposed to that.
Yeah, if anybody's listening and knows what the deal is, I would be curious.
Does she do it while she's not being all weird and creepy? Sorry, I'll preface that as evil, weird and creepy, not annoying little child, weird and creepy.
I don't know. I'll look out for that though. I don't know.
Yeah, we haven't really seen her talk recently in a non-creepy way. We're kind of creepy Maria permanent mode from now on. It feels like.
Yeah.
I feel like creepy Maria, evil Maria, is like supposed to be presented as a distinct, different personality. Not necessarily like a multiple personality disorder sort of thing, but just like when she tunes in to the occultist part of herself, I guess, and when she gets like that wicked smile and that very degrading way of talking, that seems to be almost like a different person acting. So if she starts doing that, referring to herself as Maria and not I in those instances, I wonder if that has something to do with it.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, I could see that. I can see that for sure. But she's definitely almost a different person when she's speaking like that. I love it personally. I know that there's dissenting opinions on Maria, but I love her.
I think she's terrifying and not a character I want to be around.
No.
But I think her existence in the story is mandatory and adds a lot to the narrative, having somebody who seems to know what's going on, at least to an extent, and when they ask more, she's just like, I don't know, I don't care, I'm going to get what I want at the end of this, and that's all I desire.
I almost feel like she's complicit. I've been wondering this last read if she this last two reads, if she is actually actively helping in the non-magic version, that she's actually helping a murderer because she believes it's all magic.
I see what you mean. I feel like with chapter 1, you definitely get that vibe, especially like when they find her in the room facing a wall, which to me is still probably the creepiest scene in the story thus far. But I feel like she's enough of a child through and through that her excitement in playing along, and if she was knowingly helping Beatrice, she would be letting that slip, if not flaunting it openly in a way that they couldn't disprove. And then dismiss as this is just a child's fancy and what she wishes was happening and all that. The fact that that's not happening, I don't know if any of the humans are complicit.
Okay.
I don't know. I mean, I've thrown out all of the servants except for I think Kanon and Kumasawa, right? Even though Kumasawa seems to be the obvious one, I think I've suspected each of the other ones. I'm even still not sold on Genji being a sleeper agent. Not even a sleeper, but just like undercover. Even though a later scene in this episode here suggests otherwise. Which again, Genji is moving up as one of my favorites. I'm pretty sure.
Yeah.
Tell you, when I do eventually play the fighting game, I think Genji's going to be my main.
Oh, all right. Goda has some good moments in this one as too. We'll get to that later as well.
Yeah.
Rare Goda W.
I didn't expect it.
No, me neither.
Suddenly, the door to the parlor slams, and everyone notices the return of Rosa, Shannon, and Genji. Rosa immediately slaps Maria for talking about the occult, and continues to hit her until she responds appropriately. Having taken a gun from Kenzo's study, Rosa has become much more serious, and is taking charge of the situation. Realizing that there would likely need to be more than one culprit to kill the 6 found dead in the chapel, everyone decides it would be best to stick together from now on. Battler wants to take George and Goda with him to go and gather Jessica and Kanon. Rosa asserts that everyone needs to travel together, as this is a wolf and sheep puzzle. George is happy to see Shannon again, and they all leave toward Jessica's room. As they travel to the mansion, Rosa yells at everyone to stick together and keep an eye out for danger. On arriving at Jessica's room, however, they discover that her door has been painted with another bloody magic circle. Genji notes that it appears to have been drawn recently, and Maria informs everyone that it's the first magic circle of the moon, with the power to open unopenable doors. With no one answering their knocks, and the door seemed to be locked, Rosa and Goda opened the door with the master key. Entering Jessica's room, their worst suspicions are confirmed. Jessica is dead on the floor with an occult stake in her back. Dr. Nanjo confirms her death to have been fairly recent, and the blame game begins. Battler and George blame themselves for letting Jessica run off on her own when they should have known the killer was still on the island, and Rosa immediately turns on Goda, who was the last to see her. Goda explains that Jessica wanted to be left alone, and that Kanon said to leave it to him. Everyone realizes that Kanon is missing, and Rosa orders them to search the room in case Kanon, his corpse, or the culprit might still be hiding in the room. However, they find nothing. Battler begins going on about how they need to search the mansion for Kanon in case he's still in trouble, but Rosa shouts for everyone to be quiet. She points out that Jessica's key was on the bedside table and begins asking about the servants' master keys. According to Genji, each servant holds a master key that can open almost every lock in the mansion. One master key per servant and no extras. We then cut to Meta Battler, who recalls that in a previous game, extra master keys were speculated to have existed. Meta Beatrice appears and confirms that she has altered the setup of the game so that the only master keys are the ones held by the servants, one key each. Meta Battler is curious what Rosa is getting at, and Beatrice says that he will just have to watch and find out. Rosa claims that because Jessica's key was locked inside the room, the culprit must have had a master key. While she can corroborate Genji and Shannon's alibi from her conversation with Kenzo, neither Kumasawa nor Goda can provide their innocence. However, the most telling thing she says is that Jessica was stabbed in the back. This to Rosa makes the missing Kanon the most likely culprit. Rosa pressures Goda and Kumasawa to claim to not be close enough to Jessica to have been able to kill her in such a way. Rosa almost seems to take perverse pleasure in getting the other servants to finger Kanon as the culprit. She declares that Kanon definitely killed Jessica, and that if anyone later finds him and he claims to have been captured by the culprit for a time, they should assume that he is lying. We then cut back to Meta Battler, who calls Rosa's argument filthy. Meta Beatrice says the Battler could just give in and say it was a witch who did it, if accusing the servants bothers him so much. Beatrice says that she learned Battler's weak points in the last game. If he wants to deny the witch, all he has to do is sacrifice Kanon. And since Kanon is already dead, he won't even have to continue to doubt anyone else. Meta Battler is shaken, but refuses to think Kanon committed this crime. Back on the game board, Dr. Nanjo is the first to break and go along with the theory that Kanon killed Jessica. Rosa continues that the crime likely had something to do with Kinzo's hidden gold. As a result, the possibility of there being multiple culprits, or someone among them having been paid off, are not zero. According to Rosa, there are only two groups of people you can be sure aren't suspects: yourself and those who are already corpses. Until Kanon's corpse is found, he is the most likely suspect. Not wanting suspicion, or Rosa's gun, to be pointed in their direction, everyone silently agrees. Meanwhile, the spirits of Jessica and Kanon watch on, unseen. Jessica cries that it's horrible that Kanon, who had fought to save her, is being besmirched this way simply because the witch erased his corpse. Beatrice laughs at the ridiculous lamentations of the dead that will never reach the living.
Man, I feel like those servants were so quick to turn on Kanon in that, and I kind of get it because it takes the blame away from them, but it was kind of heartbreaking to see that kind of flip around. And Rosa, like, they've made a real point in this episode of highlighting how young she is. She's probably spent a lot of time with those servants. So for her to be speaking with such, I don't know, vitriol against... I mean, it's not surprising because all of the members of this family are kind of arseholes, but when it comes to money especially, like, I don't know. It was kind of upsetting, and I totally understood why Jessica and Kanon were crying beyond the grave.
Yeah. It's... The story has a pretty expected, but not, uninteresting take on classism.
Yeah.
Whereas that's not the focus of the story. And just how power dynamics never truly allow people to be seen as equals, which is further expounded upon later on in this episode, too. She sucks. But I went into this, like, within the first 2 hours when you're introduced to all the characters for the first time, thinking, wow, Rudolph might be the worst of them. Whereas right now, I feel like Rudolph would be the only one who might not act that way.
Yeah,
right?
Agreed.
He's the only child of Kinzo, or, well, I would say other spouses, but Kyrie has also been pretty chill, that we haven't seen him be a prick to anybody. Like, his past, he made poor choices. But other than that, the dude seems to have, like, gotten some therapy and seems to kind of be okay.
Yeah, he just seemed pretty chill. I'm curious to see if he actually is. I'm hoping that in one of the future episodes, we'll actually, get beyond get Kyrie and Rudolph, actually surviving the first killing.
Yeah.
Would be nice.
Yeah. I mean, Rudolph is one of the few characters that have seen consequences of their actions, right? Because, like, Rudolph drove away Battler. Like, he saw what his philandering did, and he was like, oh. And he seems to have corrected at least somewhat. So he's one of the few people who's actually, at least made some attempt to change themselves.
You've got to figure shit out to get with Kyrie, right? If she sees something in you. From what we see as her as a character, like, she strikes me as the kind of woman who's not going to stand no fools,
Yeah. I love her.
Yeah. I'm hoping that, like, Chapter 3 is going to have both Rudolph and Kyrie and Kraus survive. That's what I want to see, is that dynamic kind of play out.
Okay.
We'll see.
We shall. As everyone begins leaving Jessica's room for the police to eventually investigate, Battler suddenly interjects the classic Dameda, Zen Zen Dameda. While Battler agrees it's good to be vigilant, he refuses to accept Kanon as Jessica's murderer. Meta Beatrice is intrigued by Peace Battler's sudden interjection, and even Meta Battler is unsure of what he can do to fight back, but decides to fight on anyway. George and Shannon are thankful that Battler is standing up for Kanon. Rosa continues to try to deflect by asking which of Kumasawa or Goda Battler then wishes to suspect, if not Kanon, but Battler rejects this premise. Battler asserts that Kanon didn't have a master key in the first place. He recalls from Goda's earlier retelling of the events that Kanon had given his master key to Jessica to use to open the VIP room. He asks Dr. Nanjo to check Jessica's body, and lo and behold, he finds a master key. With this, Battler says, Rosa has no right to cast suspicions on anyone.
I want to know what the fuck's happening with these ghosts. Suddenly, so much of everything that's happened to Kanon in Chapter 2 so far has been, like, affirmation that this is absolutely fantasy. You've seen the witch manifest, you've seen her do cruel as hell shit, you've seen her manipulate, you've seen her summon demons, you fought them, killed one, had them kill you, got eaten by one, and now you're speaking from beyond the grave? I don't get it.
Yeah.
Kanon's a real one, man.
He really is. Bro needs a good, happy ending. He needs to not die a fucking lazy boy, you know? I also really love whenever Battler just, like, I don't know what happened, but I'm standing up for my convictions. Understanding that it's easier for everyone to accept that it's canon to not blame the people in the room with them. And just being able to finally be like, look, we don't have to know the answer of what happened, but we can, kind of disprove that it was him in the first place, and here's evidence of the fact. Unless Nanjo is the one who pulls the key, which was I'm surprised nobody mentioned that at all in this chapter. If they're trying to say it's mundane, that Nanjo could easily have done it, and then just put the focus on him or Kanon. Like, there's your two, but we didn't get that.
I'm trying to think. We're saying that if Nanjo had a master key somehow and what planted it on Jessica's corpse?
If Nanjo was complicit with the killer, he's got the key and got lucky that Battler told him to look for her key in his pocket, the key in her pocket, and then he was like, "Oh, yeah, here it is." Like, again, I know that didn't happen, but if they're trying to say that it could have been, this or that.
Okay.
No one mentioned that Nanjo is the one that had the convenience of planting evidence in that moment.
Yeah, is that oversight or is that cherry picking? Is that back to the classism again? Like, because Nanjo's the family doctor, the trusted family doctor, he's kind of, not completely free of suspicion, but he's almost more like a family member than the servants are. Because
then the next question is, how did he get the key? Who is he working in league with? You can't just say that. There is still somebody else, etc., etc.
Yeah, but the fact that, like you say, that is kind of a glaringly obvious thing that they don't talk about at all.
Yeah.
In this episode.
And the thing that I thought was that kind of took me aback is Battler being like, no, it cannot be Goda, this guy that I just met. He smiles when cooking too much. I'm like, bro, what? What?
Yeah, it was weird.
Yeah, what do you think was in that soup they had for lunch? It was Kanon soup.
Oh, man.
I feel like that's one of the moments where the narrative's like, we can't just go off on this. We have to keep moving forward. I don't know. It just felt off to me. maybe there's something to that. Maybe it's just let's move the story.
I mean, they're all detectives.
I guess, but you don't have to be a detective to, I don't know. The whole, like, even if you look at this in a mundane way, if you're like, well, I don't want to frame one of my friends or one of my family. I don't want to think they're, murderers. So therefore, I just won't think about it. And there, you can't prove me otherwise. I'm like, that kind of also flies in the face of everything that he's trying to do and find the culprit. Like, you can't just say no. You have to methodically deduce why not.
Battler is being very strange. I agree. His logic does not make sense. It's very circular.
It's just a little inconsistent.
Yeah, and I just feel like it's eroding his credibility when he's like, I cannot possibly consider these people. Like, even him ruling out Kumasawa was a little bit like, dude, you haven't seen her in years. Like, what?
I think that's more to speak to just his immaturity. Right. Get Kyrie in here. She'll be like, no, we can't do that. But she'll do it without being, like, overly emotional. God, I just need to see more of her personality in these murder mystery moments. She's been killed both times,
She's so dead.
So dead.
I think is around here. I think it's around here where Battler actually does say that, like, shortly at least in the story, he says that he looks into Rosa's eyes and sees that while they both would deny the witch, he can see that she would sacrifice anyone, whereas he just couldn't.
Yeah, it's what makes him the protagonist of the story.
Yeah.
Meta Beatrice applauds Battler's efforts, but all this has done is remove another human suspect from Battler's toolkit. Battler brushes Beatrice off and begins their duel of truths by inquiring into the state of the closed room itself. Beatrice responds that there are absolutely no types of hidden doors. This door is the only way in or out, and the only way to lock this door is with Jessica's single key or the master key, only one of which is held by each servant. She also adds that the window is locked from the inside. Battler asks about Kanon, and Beatrice says that Kanon was killed in this room, but refuses to say that his corpse is in the room, as she had erased it with her magic. Battler is unsure of how best to tackle this riddle, and decides to start with the door. He asks if the last time the door was locked was by a master key, and Beatrice refuses to answer. However, he is unsure if that is because he has hit on something, or that Beatrice is just being fickle. Beatrice says that using the red carries risk, as seen by her defeat in the chapel, and she won't use it uselessly. She does, however, say that when locked, Jessica's room does not permit any form of entry or exit, and that no trick could have the effect of locking the door from the outside without using a key. Battler continues to struggle with the idea that in order to deny the witch, he will have to suspect one of his family members, or the servants. Beatrice laughs. This is a closed room of his own making. Battler declares that he will find the solution with the 19th person, a human, Beatrice, is the culprit. Back on the game board, Peace Battler resigns. He says that while he can prove that Kanon couldn't have locked the door, he couldn't manage to figure out who Jessica's killer is. He apologizes to Rosa and recognizes that while they both want to deny the witch, he wasn't willing to lose anyone, whereas she would sacrifice anyone necessary. Should be my own damn notes that I would know I was going to say that just moments ahead.
You're so good at this.
It's what's it called? It's like a teaser, right, for what you're about to say next. That's what happened. You just do that effortlessly.
Yeah. It's called short-term memory loss.
Do you guys think this section is more interesting if we didn't have the scene of what happened with Jessica and Kanon already?
No. Personally, no.
Because we got that already, right? In chapter 1. The whole, there are no answers, there are only questions.
Yeah.
But then you kind of get into this, like, we were saying this before we started recording, get on with it. We, the reader, already know what has happened here. Unless they pull some, but did it really happen at all? Which I don't think they're going to do. And so, I don't know.
Well, I guess that begs the question, why do you think we're bothering with these red truths if the answer is just magic stakes in it?
Agreed. That's what I wonder as well.
That's the thing I've been alluding to wanting to talk about, that I think I know how the story's going to go. There is a reason.
All right. You're setting the groundwork. You're laying the foundations for your theory.
Yeah.
Interesting.
Just like you, Kyle, I'm giving a prelude to my thoughts.
Yeah, I don't think you would have made it more interesting because I enjoyed that scene. I didn't hear you guys talk about it on the last one. I haven't watched the last one fully, but from the description of the episode, I get the impression that it wasn't particularly enjoyed. Ben
didn't like it. Becca and I did.
There was mostly some confusion about why. Like, I think a lot of Ben's confusion. Ben was like,
"It's so out of left field.
Why bother having this be a mystery if we're just going to show? Yeah, if we're just going to show magical waifu girls appear and stab people. Like, he felt it kind of, and then like suddenly there's blade battles. It feels a little out of place compared to the Red Truth and like the hard mystery elements. It's very contrasted in a way that he wasn't expecting, I guess, at this point in the story.
I see. So I can kind of think of it as like a perspective piece from Beatrice's perspective as to what she would want people to see, and that's why it is so contrasting to everything else. But like, I think I'm glad that I saw that piece because that would have made this even more difficult for me to slog through, honestly, this particular back and forth.
Yeah.
I really am starting to struggle with them.
Yeah, nothing really happens here. It's a lot of emotions, which I think is very realistic, in this sort of situation. But I don't know. Maybe not. I think more realistically, people would be freaking out that like someone here's a killer. I'm going the Kinzo strategy and locking myself in a room.
Returning to the parlor, Rosa has everyone sit together and stay safe until the boat arrives tomorrow. They eat a lunch of canned foods just in case the 6 in the chapel have been killed with poison. Maria brings out her book of puzzles and shows Battler the wolves and sheep puzzle that Rosa had referenced earlier. The basic premise is that if there are ever more wolves at a location than sheep, then the wolves kill all the sheep. Rosa uses the lunch dishes as an excuse to have all the servants of Dr. Nanjo leave the room. Now, Battler says, she has chased out all the wolves. Rosa appreciates that Battler is quick on the uptake and explains that she thinks it highly likely that one or more of the servants are accomplices. Battler tries to flip the chessboard over, saying that a servant culprit would have no reason to lock the door and incriminate themselves like that. However, Rosa says that it's also possible that Kanon hid in the room after locking it from the inside, or used a hidden passage to escape. After all, without the Red Truth, you can't disprove devils.
So, couple things here. Are we sure the Red Truths are truths and not red herrings from the author perspective? It's not a real question to answer, I don't think. It's just something I want to throw out there.
Sure.
Okay. I won't give a real answer, but I'll say no, I don't think so.
Yeah, I don't think so either, but I'd just like to,
Yeah, I would be very mad if I was reading this and it's like, okay, we're explicitly going to make sure this is telling you the truth, and we're going to call that out, the fact that we're doing this as a meta thing, and then later it's like, we're just fucking with you. That would be so mad. I wrote all these down.
It's a red herring. It's red.
Oh, man.
And the other thing is, oh, man, that whole... the freaking sheep and wolves and sheep puzzle. I just didn't need a 10-minute explanation of that.
Yes, that was the thing that I was going to say earlier. That's just like,
God.
Okay, you could say it, but then they throw the visual at you, and then they show it back and forth, and I'm like, can I speed through this part a little bit, please?
Yeah, that was for real so unnecessary.
Mm-hmm. Okay, but what if there was a wolf, a sheep, and a sheaf of wheat? Who is the sheaf of wheat?
And a pig.
Yeah.
You throw the wolf in the river, because why do you keep a wolf? Why? Take your chicken and your feed. And... Yeah. It'll be fine.
The wolves will swim across. No big deal.
If your boat can only carry 2 things, you should go get a better boat, you know?
Or quickly craft a raft and drag it behind the boat with the wolves on. Easy.
Yeah. Minecraft taught me how to do that.
Sure. Meta Battler appears and curses that on the game board he can't disprove Rosa's theories that he knows to be untrue because of the Red Truth. Beatrice scoffs at detective novels that use conventions such as Knox or Van Dyne to get their great detective to know with certainty that no secret passages exist, even without having to search for them. After all, she says, there are no hidden doors in this room. There is no way to get in or out other than the door and the windows. George doesn't like Rosa's logic, but he admits that he doesn't have anything better. He especially doesn't like that Rosa is lumping Shannon in with a group that she considers to be wolves. However, given that Shannon was alone with Genji for so long, she thinks it makes more sense for both of them to be wolves. Rosa says that she would become a demon to protect Maria, and with both their parents dead, she will be a mother to both of them as well, as long as they always remain where she can see them, just in case.
I think the one thing about this whole wolves and sheep thing that is relevant is the idea of how many of them are together dictates whether they can act or not. So you can start making a lot of if-then statements. Right? If these three went together and they all came back, then logically, two of them are not wolves. Right? So you got yourself some noble information to go to Clock Tower. And I think that is going to become an important thing to think about. And how is something as a mechanic that will be introduced in a couple of paragraphs here.
Yeah, a lot of, as I said before, a lot of Umineko it's slowly teaching you the rules by which you can use to read Umineko better.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, it does spend a lot of time on some of these things, but because it's trying to ingrain with you, like, hey, this is important, and maybe go read the previous chapter with this in mind, because you might uncover something important from that.
Oh. Wait. Does it want us to reread it multiple times?
Yes, but no.
Can I just use my majestic memory that usually fails me?
Yeah. So you look at it this way. At the end of chapter 1, right before Natsui goes and gets herself killed, who is the group that got kicked out of Kinzo's room? All right, it was Genji, Kumasawa, Dr. Nanjo, and Maria, because they're the ones that may have put the envelope on the desk.
Yeah.
So, if we're saying that they have to be outnumbered with the puzzle, but in real life they'd probably be two equals, it's saying that there's two wolves amongst those four. At least.
Is it? Wait.
Don't look at me. Yeah, I don't know who it is.
But 3 of them die.
So?
Wait.
I think we established that people would be willing to die to meet Beatrice's desires, with Shannon dying in the first sacrifice of the 6. At least that's just what we suspect. I think it's possible that it may not have been Shannon who takes that spot, but Goda who takes that spot. No, Goda was dead. Yeah, I think Goda could be a wolf there. So, that's the kind of thing it's thinking about. We're going to learn a lot of new concepts and mechanics, and I think the game is going to revisit previous chapters.
Huh?
It's going to actually, or you think it's going to force us to use our brains to revisit previous chapters, or both?
I think it's going to revisit that, and I guess I'm getting into it. I'll just say what I think is going to happen. Is I think the Answers arc, right, chapters 5 through 8, at least part of them, are going to be revisiting chapters 1 through 4 with the, okay, we know this is a fantasy. How did Beatrice do it? And I don't know what the importance is, what they're going to have to gain out of it. But Battler is going to be like, this is how you did it. I can dismantle you. To what end, I don't know. But I think it's going to be like, okay, who was conspiring with her? Why? How did they do it? Why did they do it? And that's going to give them more pieces of the puzzle, maybe to start solving the epitaph. I don't know how that's going to go. But I think that's where the story is going. We're learning the rules that we have completely dismantled any way that this is a mundane mystery novel. It's a fantasy novel, and they're introducing the rules in which this world works that we're going to have to think about to start understanding how these murders happened, why they were presented in such a mysterious way, right? If she's such a powerful witch, why does it matter that she used the locker room? Why did she have to be so theatrical about it to kill them the way that she did?
She's bored.
Because in the chapter 1, she wasn't sure. And you can say that, but he's going to say, no, that's too simple. There's more to her than that.
I enjoy your theory. I don't know that I think that that's how it's...
What a gentle way of saying you think I'm completely wrong.
I don't think that's how it's going to go. I just don't. I don't know why. I'm actually leaning more towards... From this particular reading, I'm leaning more towards there actually not being any magic.
Okay.
Aside from the fact that I think Beatrice and Maria are literally the same person.
How you're gonna justify that without saying it's fantasy novel in some way? I look forward to hearing.
No, I can't. That's what I'm saying. But
Yeah.
I think that it's not going to be. I don't think it's going to be as clear cut as it's just fantasy.
A bullet point of mine that we passed over because it just wasn't relevant at the time is they're going out of their way to really prove that this story is not mundane in nature.
Mm-hmm. This is a very fantasy-heavy section for sure.
Yeah.
Or is it? It's not, because it's a sci-fi story I've been telling y'all for weeks.
Sci-fi and fantasy are basically one and the same anyway.
It's just how much electricity do you involve?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Like, Bitcoin is sci-fi. Or is it fantasy, actually? I think it's fantasy.
Shut up. Shut up. I need Beatrice coin.
Ooh.
Oh, man.
That's pretty good.
Beatocoin.
Beatocoin. Yeah, that's it.
In the kitchen, Koda's using the leftovers from the canned food lunch to prepare a proper meal for the servants. With just the servants and Dr. Nanjo around, the mood is much lighter. That is, until suddenly they hear the sounds of someone skulking outside the back door of the kitchen. Knowing it impossible for anyone to be there, they're all on guard as Genji and Goda go to investigate. When they open the door, a heavily injured Kanon falls into the room. The servants quickly carry Kanon to the servants' room for first aid treatment and begin to send Kumasawa to go and inform Rosa. However, Kanon suddenly speaks up and weakly tells them not to tell Rosa. In the servant room, Dr. Nanjo does his best to treat Kanon's wounds, but he says that it's a miracle that he's even alive right now. Between screams of pain and hate, Kanon tells everyone that Rosa was the one who killed Jessica. Shannon, feeling something to be amiss, suddenly runs out into the corridor and begins searching for something. Goda is worried that Rosa may have chased all of the servants out of the parlor so that she could kill George and Battler. He advocates for attacking Rosa head-on before she gets a chance to use her gun to kill more people. Kumasawa, however, says that perhaps it's just best just to not antagonize her and hope that some of them still live. However, Kanon suddenly stands up and opens his red eyes. He says that he heard Rosa say that she plans to kill everyone on the island so that she can keep the inheritance money for herself. Dr. Nanjo, despite knowing it to be medically impossible that Kanon is standing with the wound that serious, tries to get him to lay back down. However, Kanon just says that his wound isn't that serious and sticks his hand into his chest up to the base of his fingers. Shen suddenly returns, having found a spider web in the boiler room, and grabbed it with a handkerchief. Shannon questions if Kanon is really Kanon, and begins to bring the handkerchief closer to him. After all, it should do nothing to him, that is, unless spiders are his natural enemy. Kanon suddenly jumps backwards and slashes at the throats of those near him with a purple manifested blade. Shannon is saved by Genji pulling her back, but Dr. Nanjo and Kumasawa drop dead where they stand. Goda then tackles Kanon and pins him against the wall. When Kanon goes to cut him with his blade, Genji throws a knife he had hidden up his sleeve earlier to pin Kanon's hand to the wall. He then takes the spiderweb that Shannon had gathered and presses it up against Kanon's face, and it begins to sizzle and burn like meat on a flame, until his body bursts and scatters into golden butterflies. Goda stares at the traces of Kanon's blood left on his hand that proves that he really was there, but has no idea what just occurred.
So, Capelli, I know you got some stuff to say, but I'm just going to hop in first and be like, because the fact that Kumasawa died and, like, her last words were basically like, let's just chill, see what happens. She's just so great, and we don't see enough of her, in my opinion. Like, I just want more, like, I don't know, old lady who don't give a fuck vibes through this.
Yeah, she had a really great line earlier in the kitchen where it was like, a servant's great art is knowing how to slack off while on the job. Oh, Kumasawa.
Perfect. Yeah, it was so good. So good.
I love that she gets away with it, too, because everyone's just like, oh, she's just a crazy old lady.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yeah.
I mean, she's built up years of goodwill with them, so it's not surprising that she gets away with it. She's practically family.
Yeah.
You know, except for the parts where they treat her like absolute trash as soon as things turn sour.
She's not considered furniture, is she?
She is not, no. She does not have the Golden Eagle.
Yeah, as far as we know. Yeah. Which is surprising for as long as she's been around, but I guess, like, there's some other servants that have been mentioned, whatever, same thing, they don't have the Golden Eagle on them, too.
Yeah, as far as we know, the only ones that have the Golden Eagle are Genji, Shannon, and Kanon. Yeah.
Yeah. I feel bad for Kumasawa, despite the fact that she's been in the story in like the top 1/4 of the cast so far, we know very, very little about her. But I want to talk about this whole shape-shifting furniture, this face stealer, this Terminator 2 disguising bullshit. And I think this is going to be used to cause crazy mysteries in the future. Of yes, you were there, but was it really you? Or was that person dead and it was one of Beatrice's furniture that was doing it? That's I think more mysteries that we're going to get in the future. That she's showing what she's capable of. We also have to talk about why are spiders the natural enemy, and how does Shannon know? Right, because I think Kanon and Shannon clearly have some inkling of the importance of what it means to be furniture, and the fact that they're supposed to make it to the Golden Land is that a promise of what it means to be furniture. Is that Kinzo saying, "I guarantee you'll make it to this." But how do they know these things? My current theory is that Shannon found spiders in the shrine.
Okay.
That she inadvertently destroyed by destroying the mirror. Where did she learn these things? It really has to be from either Kinzo or what she saw in the shrine, or I guess we still don't know a ton about the orphanage that the two of them came from, I suppose, but I would still probably say that that's them learning from Kinzo.
Have we not encountered the spiders and witches thing before?
No, I don't think so.
I don't think so.
Oh man, my brain's just making shit up then. Good job, memory.
Well, I mean, there's kind of an implication, I guess, that it's butterflies, so spiders are the enemies of butterflies, maybe? But that's not, like, a super strong connection, I wouldn't say.
Okay.
Either way, this is probably, I think, my second favorite scene so far. As far as, like, the horror element of the story goes.
Sure.
Right? Person you think you know suddenly turns and attacks you and kills people, and was so convincing. But the reaching into his body and then being like, oh, this is
body
nothing.
Horror.
And just being like, what the fuck? Like, that was so visceral, and the sound design in that scene, so good. Loved it.
Yeah.
Yeah, they do a lot. They have, like, a few limited sound effects they use, but they really make them work.
Yeah. So, love the scene. Great scene. I don't think we're going to get anything like this for the rest of the chapter.
Huh. Okay. Not even towards the end?
No. I wouldn't be surprised if I'm wrong, but...
Me too.
It's happened a lot.
I think... that's true. This chapter has done a lot. But it's happened a lot... No, not really. I was going to say it's happened a lot to prove Battler wrong, but he hasn't had the perspective of seeing what happened in either of these instances.
No.
True.
So yeah, actually maybe we are going to get one more scene where something happens with the revelation of what happened to Nanjo and Kumasawa. And Goda is going to die, and Genji's going to die. I don't know. Alright, Genji. Genji was a fucking badass in this thing. So was Shannon. Let me tell you, my opinion of Shannon has dramatically shifted from how Chapter 2 began to where she's at in my mind now.
Yeah.
Calm, collected, getting shit done, taking care of business, not fooled by this fake Kanon in the slightest, her brother. I love it.
Yeah, she's fab. And I almost feel like the change was at that interaction that she had in when she took Beatrice her dinner, was it?
Yeah.
Right? And she was like, I know. Like, I reject I choose my own fate, thanks. Right?
She understood what she was doing.
If it's truly fate, then I'm gonna do whatever I want, because then the path that I'm on anyway is like already predetermined, kind of like, fuck it. If that's the way it works, then whatever I do is gonna send me down there anyway. Yeah.
I want none of what you're selling. I'll take it myself, and so good.
Yeah, it's really good.
But unfortunately, she still runs away with George.
Maybe George has hidden depths we haven't seen yet, okay? He's had so many years to cultivate those hidden depths, Capelli. So many more years.
So, I will say this in your favor, right? Goda also fucking sucks at the start of this chapter and everything before then. But through this chapter, he's had the opportunity to grow and change and kind of like do away with that belittling nature.
Mm-hmm.
That being said, if he survived and went to serve somewhere else and was put into a room with less experienced servants who had more authority than him, I think he would treat them the same. So I don't think he's really changed as a person. He's changed in how he views Kanon and Shannon.
Yeah.
Doesn't necessarily mean that I forgive him for that. So, he is still a prick, but he has the potential to be redeeming. Does George have the same? Bro's had way more screen time and has done very little with it.
Yeah, I agree.
So true. So true. And to your point of you think we this is going to be the last time we have this kind of scene. I don't think it is, because I think we have a narrator perspective shifty thing going on throughout this episode again. I don't think we've got to it in the summary yet. But there's a moment where they say the narrator's voice says "we shook."
Interesting.
As they are about to go into a room, and I'm like, who is we? Who's narrating as we?
The narrator changes constantly without giving you the hint as to who. But there's very clear moments where it's like, okay, this is Rosa's perspective. This is Battler's, and this is Maria's. And when it gets to Maria's, I have to figure out, is this Maria in current moment, or is this Maria in the future looking back on all of this? Because that's very much the vibe I got at the end of chapter 1. The way that you have the omnipresent, or the omniscient, narrator. I think that's what Maria is doing.
Right. And with the message bottle as well, yeah.
Yeah, that's really the big hint as far as that's concerned.
Yeah, I think is they are about to go back into, either they're about to go into this room, or they're about to go into a room, and it says, "But we shook," and I'm like, what? Who is? Yeah. Like, we've not had a we narration at all until that moment.
I'm pretty sure that's. We think we have. I think what that is Battler is describing everybody standing outside of the door to go into the servants' room, and nobody wanted to go in because he's like, all of us out here were shaking. So he was telling somebody else what was going on.
Yeah, maybe. I don't know. We'll see.
I will say George was a real one for keeping Maria out of this scene.
Yes.
Not because he's a great big cousin, but because I just don't need her in this scene right now. I just don't.
This is also a great moment from Genji showing off his knife skills kind of out of nowhere.
Yeah, it's so fucking cool. The way he saves Shannon from each thing, I'm like, God damn. I knew we'd be getting stuff like that from him. He just has that energy.
Yeah.
Which is going to make his betrayal all the more painful.
Yeah, I mean, there's also, because he's also one of the furniture, and we've seen that Kanon is able to do magical feats, there's kind of the implication that, maybe Shannon, maybe Genji also have similar kind of magical powers, although Shannon hasn't shown anything yet.
Yeah.
Back in the parlor, the servants have rushed back to tell everyone what has occurred in the servant room. However, none of them are able to properly put into words what actually happened. They're able to get across the gist of what happened, that someone who they originally thought was Kanon had appeared at the back door of the kitchen and then killed Dr. Nanjo and Kumasawa before vanishing. However, details beyond that they seem to be unable to find the words for. Rosa decides that she needs to see the bodies and has everyone come with her to the servant room. However, when they arrive and unlock the door, while the room is stained with blood, no bodies are found. Meta Battler and Meta Beatrice appear, and Battler begins to speculate about the nature of the closed room. But Beatrice says that Rosa herself will destroy the premise of his reasoning. Back on the game board, Rosa finds another letter from the witch. The letter urges the Ushiromiya family to focus on solving the epitaph, and says that Beatrice borrowed the 2 corpses for her ritual. Also inside are 2 master keys, one from Kanon and the other from Kumasawa. Back in the metaverse, Meta Battler is struggling. He asks about the keys specifically to the servant room, but those are in the key box in the center of the servant room. There are several servant room keys, but all of those are inside the key box. It would seem the situation is exactly the same as with Jessica's death. Entry and exit are impossible except for the single door and the single window. And those were both locked. The door and the window do not permit any kind of entry or exit when they are locked. And obviously, it is impossible to unlock the door without the servant room key or a master key. I agree with Beatrice that she really needs to find an easier way to say all of these things. Battler continues to scramble, but hits on the possibility that hidden door wouldn't cover the possibility of some kind of hidden hiding spot that Kanon's corpse could have been stashed in, or the culprit could be hiding in right now. Battler thinks he's finally turned it around when suddenly Beatrice hits him with a barrage of red truths.
Before we go into this barrage of red truths, I want to point out that as something I've noticed is that when she's talking about magic, none of that is red truths.
True. She mentions in the previous game that if she says that in red, then it would be a stalemate, right? Because the entire premise is that she needs to kind of like drag Battler along. So she needs some way to counteract his claims while also not just stating that magic exists in a way that would ruin the fun of it, I guess.
I suppose.
But it is interesting, yeah.
I suppose.
All right. No one exists in this room except for your group. Your group refers to Battler, George, Maria, Rosa, Genji, Goda, and Shannon. Let's go back to Jessica's room. At the time of Jessica's corpse discovery, only Battler, George, Maria, Rosa, Genji, Goda, Shannon, Kumasawa, and Nanjo were in Jessica's room. Whoops, the corpse of Jessica is also included, of course. Therefore, both in the case of Jessica's room and the case of this servant's room, no humans exist that you were not aware of. No one is hiding. And I'll say more. No method exists by which the doors can be locked from the outside without using a key. Regarding the windows, no method exists by which they could somehow be locked from the outside. And while I'm at it, you are incompetent. Cackle, cackle, cackle. Hee 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 hee.
I laughed at that line.
Oh man,
yeah,
so good.
It's a fantastic line because she gets like so pissed. She's like, "You're incompetent." Like she gives him such a face.
Like, as a red truth, it's just, man, what a takedown.
Mm.
But it is also important in that it establishes truth is what she believes to be true, not universally true.
Yeah.
Also, there is I think I caught a discrepancy here, which is no method exists by which the doors can be locked without using a key. That means magic itself cannot lock that door.
Yeah, sometimes she hedges, and sometimes she doesn't. She'll say things like, other than magic, of course, but it usually isn't in the red text, so, yeah.
And, I mean, keys can be symbolic sometimes as well.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she uses the key of Solomon, and that locks the door, so that counts, so...
Yeah, he struck on the right idea with defining a room, the hidden door, but maybe he needs to define a key.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And the no humans exist that you were not aware of.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that she felt the need to bring that up.
So which of those people are not human? Is kind of what that made me think as well.
And really the only person who's been missing thus far is Kumasawa.
True.
And so that is to say, if Kumasawa is a wolf, is she a furniture of Beatrice in disguise, or is she knowingly serving her? Like, it's so many things that we can only theorize about it.
Or is she literally a wolf and therefore not human?
I'm so down for Werewolf Kumasawa. Like, my god.
Yo, we should totally create a social deception game based on this story when we're all done.
One Night Ultimate Werewolf Kumasawa.
Once per game, you may make a red statement.
I actually kind of love that. Oh no.
So you actually weren't here for this, Hayley. Last time I said that I've actually prepared I wrote some fan fiction of Umineko back in the day, including writing a game board with red truths. So we are going to be able to play Umineko, where y'all make theories and I strike them down with red truths at some point in the future.
Brilliant.
Yeah.
I love it. I also see a true, like, social deception, werewolf-esque, mafia-esque game where you have the characters that all have different abilities, like, based on how they are. I mean, obviously, I've got no idea what their abilities are until we get to the end of this and have all of our questions answered, but I think that could have legs. Halfway
through the game, I'll walk in a little black goat, and then Ben will pull out a sword and kill it. And then I'll say, wow, Ben, that really came out of nowhere.
Battler is devastated, drowning in a sea of red. Beatrice mocks him by offering him the possibility that Jessica was faking her death. Clearly she, Dr. Nanjo, all the servants, George, everyone is an accomplice. Everyone is a wolf. Beatrice continues. Come on, Ushiromiya Battler. Kneel. If you accept me, all of the riddles will be resolved. With my power, any kind of locked room can be created or destroyed. I'll make you my favorite piece of furniture. I'll love you so much and make you my toy until you turn to ashes.
You missed the cackle, cackle, cackle.
Cackle, cackle, cackle. Ha ha, yeah, 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 yeah.
Cackle, cackle, cackle.
So I wonder what the importance of this being red text would be, but I think it's just she's truly showing that this is her nature to find joy in his suffering. She is in a euphoric bliss at his pain.
Mm.
Yeah.
She's an evil motherfucker, what can you say?
It really adds weight to the red truths are only what she perceives as true as well, because there's no way that it's true that this is funny to everybody. It's just not a universal truth.
Yeah. I do think it's interesting that she brings up that I will make you furniture, which means the other three furnitures that we saw, right? The goat, lust, and wrath, was it?
Yes.
Were they previously humans that she manipulated? Did she create them from nothing? If she just began restoring her power because the shrine, the mirror, got destroyed, were these things always in her employ? Like, where did these demons, so to speak, come from? God, I want to know. Are they her friends that she's just playing and using as pawns? Or I don't know. Like, this is...
But this is... So, oh man, when Kanon and Shannon are talking, I feel like it's towards the beginning of this chapter about, like, being furniture, Kanon especially, talking about being furniture and about how this is, like, we know we're furniture, we know, like, this is the Golden Land is the day of our release, blah, 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 all of that stuff. Are they... Did they make some kind of deal with her when they were very young, which is why Shannon has been in service of I can never remember the name of the house, the orphanage place.
Fukuin or Gospel House?
Yeah, Gospel House. Is it like that as a kid they felt that there was so little for them that they made a deal with Beatrice? Is Kumasawa when she was a kid, because she's been in service of the family for like basically the whole time that they've owned the island? Like, are they all Beatrice's furniture? I think they might be Capelli.
I see the orphanage as having to do more with Kinzo than it does with Beatrice, but you also can't have anything with Kinzo with magic without having Beatrice there as well.
I think it's a cover.
I'm more and more confident that the story is going to heavily lean into her origins. How she came to be. Did she used to be human? Was she created? If she and Maria are the same person, like, how does that work? We're going to get that, and it's going to be instrumental into understanding the fantasy rules of this story. And if the orphanage is part of that, that's how we'll get those answers.
Well, we shall see.
Yeah.
Back on the game board, Rosa is tired of this farce. She turns her gun on the servants. With no corpses to be found, she can't even trust that Dr. Nanjo and Kumasawa are actually dead. Rosa throws Shannon's 10 years of service back in her face, saying that she must have been bought off by the promise of gold. Genji steps forward and says that since they have lost trust as servants of the Ushiromiya house, they shall all return their master keys. Rosa takes all 5 master keys and places them into Maria's handbag. George then asks if she is satisfied now that she holds all the master keys. Rosa says that she is. Now that only she holds a gun and the keys, she doesn't have to suspect anyone anymore. Maria laughs creepily and says that locks and keys are no bar to Beatrice and her magic. Rosa begins to scold her, but Battler cuts in. He cries and apologizes for not believing Maria. He says that it was all the witch's doing, and that there is no need to mistrust each other. Maria comforts Battler and says that everyone just needs to try and solve the epitaph, as Beatrice asked. Genji tells Rosa that if she barricades herself and the rest of the family in the parlor, none of the servants will attempt to enter from now on. Rosa says that, when the typhoon passes, if the cries of the seagulls return to this island again, I wonder if we'll be able to trust each other once more. We'll definitely be able to understand each other when the seagulls cry. One by one, the servants begin to leave the servant room and head to the kitchen. George says that he will stay with Shannon, and Rosa says that as an adult, see, confirmed George is an adult, George has the right to choose who and where he spends the night. After they all leave, Rosa immediately scoffs and says that there's no way she could ever trust any of that furniture. There are 5 master keys in all. Who would believe that? Obviously, one of them has an extra key and is hiding it. Thanks to the devil's proof, there is no way for humans to be able to prove that no extra master keys exist. Meta Battler appears and begs for Beatrice to show herself and prove to Rosa with the red that there are only 5 master keys. However, her red words don't reach the Rosa of the game board. She claims because Battler still denies her existence. Battler cries that he accepts the witch, that Beatrice definitely exists, but Beatrice says that he must show it with his actions. He must swear from the bottom of his heart that he will become her furniture, strip naked, crawl on the ground, kneel and make his tongue crawl across her shoes. Only then would she appear before Rosa and grant her that red truth.
Man, this 1,000-year-old witch should not be talking to a 17-year-old boy like that. Like, it's so inappropriate.
Well, if it's any consolation, I don't think it's sexual in any nature. It is just to be completely humiliating, to completely destroy him. And like that, like this part was tough because it's just, you're seeing the hero be broken down, and you couldn't have chosen a better cliffhanger for us here, Kyle. I'm like, fuck that.
Yeah.
That is demoralizing. I need to know what happens next. So I think I'm going to pull a Ben and dive right into reading after this.
Yeah, Ben sent me messages as he was reading, which was right after we recorded last time, and it was like, is Battler giving up? What is going on?
I love Genji's lines in this bit as well. It's so beautiful, so poetic. Maybe they trust each other and understand each other when the seagulls cry. Like, I don't know. It's just, I'm bad at words, but there was something really, really lovely about that.
Yeah, I think that was Rosa saying it, and then she turns around and says, I was lying! She gives an evil laugh.
Was it Rosa saying?
Yeah.
Right. Yes, okay. Yeah. Beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. But yeah, she's awful. To a point in this, like, Maria saying everybody just needs to solve the epitaph. Like, yeah, guys, why has nobody even read it this episode?
Yeah, this is episode we have completely forgot about it.
Because their family's being murdered and massacred, and they're freaked out they're gonna die.
No excuse. Puzzles. The game is afoot. Okay.
I can tell you why. It's because Rosa was given the envelope, and she was supposed to read it at dinner, and she didn't.
She didn't freaking read it. I know, right? I keep thinking about that. That's driving me insane as I'm reading through this. I'm like, Rosa, open the goddamn envelope. Every few minutes, like, Rosa's on screen. I'm like, why have you not read the envelope yet?
I think this chapter is going to come to an end with Battler like grabbing the epitaph and trying to read it so hard, and he'll like finally understand the importance of like understanding this thing is the key. I don't think he'll get anywhere with it in this chapter, but I think that will be ingrained into him.
Finally, my God, I've been trying to solve this thing since I first read it, and I don't have all of the pieces yet to solve it.
You don't even have 5% of the pieces that you need.
I still have it open in a window and like go back and read it again. I've practically got it memorized at this point as bananas.
That's cool.
But the only person that seems to have even spoke it out loud is Beatrice when she was like early on in this episode, whatever they're called, number 2. Yeah. Like, she's the only one that said anything about it, really. I think maybe Kyrie read it when she was looking at the portrait when she saw Beatrice enter, but there was no depth of, like, no emphasis on it like there was in the first episode. It's fascinating.
All right, well, that is the final bit of reading for this week. Quite the read. We have a ton of red truths this time. I've compiled them all in a document, and it's an entire page of red truths. So half of them are just he, cackle, cackle, cackle. But So if you want to delve into those at some point in the future, they will be there. I'll post them on our Discord as well in the message bottles discussion thread. We've got threads in there for each week of reading, so hop in there and give us your thoughts on each episode. Put your theories in there, assuming you haven't actually read it all the way through and already know the answers, because that's cheating. Although we do have a thread for that, so.
And you could do better than me and actually go in there and talk about it and actually read on time rather than having finished things literally 2 minutes before you're due to record.
Yeah, I can't complain too much because I only finished reading myself an hour before we started recording.
You've read it 3 times though, Kyle.
Slackers.
But yeah, so what are y'all's? Let's talk about mystery versus fantasy for a bit, because this is kind of an interesting spot in the reading, because I think we've hit on something that's really interesting about this part, is that we've got such thorough fantasy, it's going so hard into fantasy, while also introducing these very mystery-heavy red truths, right? They're just completely separate. The red truths, except for the parts where Beatrice is cackle, cackle, lick my feet, are very rarely reference anything to do with magic. It's almost all exclusively this is just eliminating a specifically mystery view element. And then we also have, on the fantasy side, literal ghosts showing up to cry about people hurting their feelings after they're dead. So the red truth doesn't care about your feelings, ghosts. Let me just say that.
Yeah. You seem to be very clearly on Team Fantasy, Cap.
Well, I think it's fantasy and mystery. It's going to be mystery within a world that we need full context of how the mystery works and why the mystery exists. So it's not a question of it's a mundane mystery versus fantasy, unless that is what you're implying. I don't know. I also would be super enthused if it ends up being it really could be either. It's up to the reader to determine. Only because, wow, how they would have to pull that off is very interesting to me. Because clearly there's something there with the fact that Beatrice refused to say some of the things in red regarding the chapel murders.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she conceded the thing about the door.
Yeah.
Which is interesting.
That's going to be the thing that really gives Battler his courage to fight on when he understands how to do it.
Well, given the flood of red truths we've seen, do y'all have any thoughts about any of the murders that we saw in these parts? Any other thoughts on the Jessica killing, or...
They keep mentioning windows, but I feel like everything I could think of that used windows was just it's so obtuse and unnecessary that just cannot be.
You're more of a Linux guy?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, Dad. I don't know if I'm on one team or the other as well. I feel like they are probably, why not both?
Yeah.
But in terms of some of the red truths and what has happened, if I lean fully into fantasy and or sci-fi, depending on how Capelli I feel at the moment, Kanon was killed in this room. Doesn't say when.
Sure.
Was it 50 years ago? And Kanon is fully Beatrice's furniture. I don't know.
Yeah, there's lots of interesting things that are put or omitted, and the way they introduce Beatrice, saying them as a character, always gives that little bit of plausible deniability of why. And I just think it just makes for a more interesting story to figure out, okay, well, what are each of these individually, what are the holes and how do they fit together as a whole? Why could she not talk about the master key for the chapel as, in more detail? Because that very much came as I cannot tell you, but I also don't have to tell you why. It's not, I won't tell you, haha. She was very much on the back foot in that moment.
Yeah.
That's so... I don't know, it kind of goes the same thing where we were saying, what if the red truth was a red herring? Okay, well, that's kind of a slap in the face of the reader that all of this is false. Same thing why would they show us these scenes with Kanon summoning a blade and fighting these demons and watching him get devoured? Why even bother showing us that? So I think the most like I'd be willing to concede is if she tells them one of the red statements I told you was a lie, and it always will be one. That sort of thing was like, okay, you're adding a bit of piece of the puzzle in, still not crazy about it, but otherwise, what's the significance going to be if it's a truly mundane mystery?
Yeah.
Well, we shall see as we continue into the story if that becomes clearer.
It's hard to look at them all, and I don't know, it's almost feels like, how can all of these things possibly be true all at once? And I mean, I'm just trying to scan them as well as we talk, but I'll make you into my favourite piece of furniture as a red truth. Like, why does she like him so much? Like, but she's also so combative against.
Yeah, it is interesting.
Because he's so entertaining that he fought so hard. Yeah. Hey, I just noticed something. She says, whoops, the corpse of Jessica is also included, of course, but the corpse of is not in red, but Jessica is, so she implying that Jessica's spirit is in the room? God, there's so many things you could speculate.
Yeah, there really are. There really are.
Yeah, she also said kind of later on that, like, oh, what if Jessica was faking being dead? So that red truth does still allow that to be true.
Yeah. It feels like the red truths actually end up with us asking more questions than they do answering them.
That's interesting and good writing. I love it. A good mystery to be sure.
Yeah. All right. Are there any other people you're suspicious of from this reading?
Anything I say would just be rehashing stuff I've already brought up.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not so sure I fully trust the Speed Teriche person.
Yeah, that's fair. Where is she? It is interesting. We haven't seen her in a while.
Yeah, that's true. That is true. God, how great would it be if she turns up dead at the end of the chapter?
Right? She's supposedly so powerful, Beatrice the Witch, but like, why is her...
Because she lives in fear.
Human form in the little tie and waistcoat. Like, surely she could have just been chilling with them all this whole time while also being Chaos Witch around there. Like, is she not that powerful after all?
Something about needing to be believed in and feared. And, I don't know.
Yeah. There's definitely a lot of interesting mythology that we only know tidbits of so far. All right, next time we'll be reading about 3 hours of the VN, finishing off episode 2 of Umineko, including the Tea Party and question mark segments. And that is videos 31 through 34 of the YouTube playlist. So we're gonna see all the rest of the Twilights and some more meta scenes and witch scenes. So
very cool.
I want to go and read it straight away, like you, Capelli, but also I really like having it fresh in my memory for when we do these, which just means I might have to read it twice. I don't know.
I'm not going to pull a Ben in that I'm not going to read all of it in one go. I would be up till 2 a.m.
Yeah. Although with this close to the end, it's going to be hard to find a good stopping point, I feel like.
We'll see what happens. I'll let you know.
Y'all get a Discord DM at 2 a.m. being like, damn it.
Damn it, Kyle! What have you done to us?
I could just keep reading. Who's gonna know?
You know, when you first pitched this and you were like, it's like however many hundreds of hours of reading and potential podcast, I was like, is he crazy? Yeah. Like, what kind of times do you think people have? And I'm so in.
But also have no time to do it.
I have no time.
We're both correct.
Exactly.
Yeah. Worth it, but definitely a lot. Yeah. Well, if you at home have been reading along, thank you so much for doing that. I'm glad that y'all are hopefully enjoying the story or rereading it if you've already read it before, and listening to us talk about it, because it's really fun to talk about. There's so much interesting stuff in the story to talk about and speculate about. I love Capelli's theories, and I rag on him a lot about them. They're all very fun and interesting, and hopefully he'll get some wins in his column here soon.
Sci-fi.
We'll get that moment where they walk down the white hallway and it's revealed to be a sci-fi story.
I'm waiting. All it's gonna take is a flash of like some machine beeping somewhere, right?
It's a spoiler for a game that so I can't talk about because it'd be a spoiler if I said which game it was for. All right. Well, thank you for joining us, and I hope you remember to think off meta.